All right, Algebra 1A students, welcome to part 3 of our video on lesson 6.5 dealing with linear inequalities. In our last video, we looked at the graphs of linear inequalities with two variables and talked about what their solutions look like. We should recall that we graphed lines starting with a y-intercept and following a slope, and then shaded half of the graph in order to mark where the solutions were and were not. In this video, we're going to graph boundary lines for inequalities that have only one variable and also shade those. Those in general are quite a bit easier if we can understand exactly what's happening. Now, an inequality in one variable can be graphed in the coordinate plane. Okay, and this is what it looks like when it is graphed in the coordinate plane. It's important to realize that all of these graphs in these videos, when we have one variable only, the boundary lines are either going to be a horizontal or a vertical line. Okay, either a horizontal or a vertical line. If we look at these two examples here, starting with example A, x is greater than -1. The only thing that I need to do to graph this inequality is to go to the point on my graph where x equals -1, which would be right here, and then go to all the other points where x equals -1, and that will be my boundary line. So the x-coordinate is -1 at this point on the x-axis, and this point up here, and this point here, and this point here, and this point here, and all of these points going up this way, and all of these points going down this way. They all have an x-coordinate that is -1. That went left 1 from the 0, 0 point, right? So this line really is a vertical line right here along this coordinate piece here. Okay. So this black line is my boundary line, but I do want you to realize that back in my inequality, I have to notice my inequality symbol, right? This is a greater than symbol, which means the line that I graph should be a dashed line and not a solid line. It should be a dashed line, right? Now, in order to check a point, as we have been doing in our first video on this lesson, we have to take a coordinate point, usually the point 0, 0, and plug it into this inequality here. The thing we have to realize is that there is no y variable, so the 0 for y, this one's not going to go anywhere. It's just that the 0 goes in where the x is, and that's how we decide where we're going to shade. So the question for us is 0 greater than -1? The answer, of course, is yes, it is. So then I will shade the 0, 0 point, which is right here, and everything on that side of the line, which would be all of this stuff. Oops, not over there. All of this stuff would get shaded in on my graph, okay? So that's what it looks like when we have x greater than or less than or something with a number. We make a vertical line at that x-coordinate, and then we graph either to the right if it's greater or to the left if it's less. All right? Now let's look at the second example here. It says y is greater than or equal to +2. So I'm going to, again, go to the point on my graph where y is equal to +2. +2 would be up 1, 2 right here. That would be where my y-coordinate is equal to +2. But we have to realize that there are a lot more points than that where my y-coordinate is greater than, or excuse me, where my y-coordinate is 2. There's this point, 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 this point. All of these points, remember, have a y-coordinate of positive 2. So they all fit in that boundary line. And now I'm going to graph the boundary line. And this time, we have to realize that my inequality symbol is different than it was in letter A. My inequality symbol is now a greater than or equal to sign, which means my line should remain solid just like it is here and not be dashed like it was over in part A. Hopefully we remember the difference there. Now, if I put in the point 0, 0, again, there's no x variable here, just like in letter A, there was no y variable. So the 0 for x isn't going to go anywhere. Just the 0 for y goes in there. 0 goes in for y here. And the question for us is 0 greater than or equal to positive 2? Is 0 greater than or equal to positive 2? The obvious answer here is no, absolutely not. So I'm not going to shade the 0, 0 point. I'm going to go to the other side of the line, and I'm going to shade all of this area up here. Okay, this is the area where y is greater than positive 2. Up if we're greater, and we'd go down below the line if we wanted less. All right? So, again, this is just like what we've been doing, graphing boundary lines and shading, but these boundary lines only involve picking a coordinate, either x or y, and making a horizontal or vertical line, and then shading appropriately. If you have questions about how to graph inequalities in the coordinate plane given just one variable, please make a note to ask me in class tomorrow. Otherwise, that's all I have for you. Have a wonderful night.